What's going on, my friends? SeanPierceJohnson here. I'm very excited because today we are beginning the build process for my pedal board, and this is going to be the pedal board that I'll be using when I play on the Warped Tour this coming summer. Now normally I like to use my Orange Rockerverb 100 for pretty much everything I do, but the problem is this gig I gotta do backline, and the backline is an amp that I don't particularly like. This is going to be a pedal board comprised of everything going into the front end of the amplifier. But there are some things that are going to be a little bit different with this particular board. First and foremost, this is going to be the first board that I incorporate my Line 6 G70 Relay wireless system into. This is the first time where I'm going to try powering it from a pedal power supply and not the one that it came with. I'm trying to keep this as condensed of a rig as possible so that I pretty much walk on stage with this board, the guitars that I'm going to use, and then just hit the go button. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we're of course using the GigRig G2, which will be the lifesaver, as it always has been for me since I first got it. Now the board that we're going to be using for this is one of the WAGGI boards that they graciously sent me a few months ago. Now in the demo we looked at a smaller size board, and this is their mid-size. I'm not necessarily sure how things are going to arrange on the pedal board. I've done a couple different concepts here and there, but that's always going to change when it comes to the final product. Now there's one thing that we have to do before we get down to building this board, and that's we have to harvest some parts for this board from the Excel audio board that I built for that demo we did a few months back. Now although I would love to have been able to get some power supplies from the GigRig, because I really do think that that power concept is very good, unfortunately it's just not within my budget right now, and I'm not to be deterred by that. I use what has been given to me and sent to me, and very happily will do so. So now we've taken the power supplies from the Excel audio board and we are going to put them and place them here on the WAGGI board. One of the big things is my Line 6 Relay wireless needs 500 milliamps to get the appropriate amount of power, and the compact power source 6 has one 500 milliamp output on there, so we are going to go ahead and use that. So now to really get the ball rolling for the WAGGI board, we need to put the Velcro on here. Okay, Velcro on, time to place the pedals. Of course, GigRig G2 will have to go right there. That seems to be the most appropriate place for it. So we will work out a way to make sure that those will stay there. Down here at the bottom corner, we are going to place the Line 6 Relay G70 wireless system. This is my GigRig Cinco patch bay, which we'll put right up here. So compression's been a thing that I've been kind of toying around with, unsure if I'm actually going to end up using it. If I do, it's going to be a toss-up between the Orange compressor and the Keeley Compressor Plus. Tuner-wise, I'm going to go with the TC Polytune 2 Noir. The main dirt tones are going to come from the Orange Getaway driver. That'll serve the bulk. And then we're going to use the full tone OCD for a little bit of extra gain stacking on top of that. As much as I want to have a really cool verb and all my different modulation effects, it's just not going to be that necessary. So I'm probably not going to put a chorus on there. I will take an echo because I am going to be taking a solo, and we're going to use the TC Electronic Flashback 2 with my signature Chaos crescendo tone print. I'm also in a toss-up right now between having the Old Blood Noise Endeavors Flatlight and my MXR EVH Phase 90 on the board. A lot of these things are kind of up in the air as well. I don't know whether or not I'm going to use my Boss OC2. And then the EP Pre from Amp-Effects is something that I've really grown to like having. And since it's small, pretty compact, I feel like I could put it on there and we'll have some really great stuff going on. Now we're going to figure out the best spot to place everything before we put all the Velcro on and get everything wired up. So here's kind of a nifty thing that I didn't really get to explain too well, or at least get a good close-up of on the demo of the WAGGI board, and that is using the little WAGGI mounting brackets. So now that we're down here, I'll give you guys a much more close-up view of putting those guys in. So we have this power cable that's currently plugged into the G2 right here, and we need to get that underneath the bridge. Our power is right there about. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna kind of feed it up here like this. Give it a little bit of slack. And now what I can do is I can go ahead and take this little guy right here. So the key is just kind of feed it all the way back. Try to make sure that the power cable gets underneath it. Snap it up like that. To keep it in place, we have these Phillips head screws. Just kind of finger tight right there. Use a Phillips head screwdriver to really place it. And we can, move this wherever we end up needing it to be. And then flip the board back over. Got the power cable right here, plug it in to the power source 8. And the G2 now has power. Now just kind of position it right there and tighten that Phillips head screw. And then that is pretty well in place. Give it a little bit more tightness. There we go. So that is power to G2. Okay, there it is. I mean, it's not quite 100% what I was hoping for, but it's, it'll get me through the gig. I'm pretty happy with the results that I have right now. It basically goes from the wireless or the cable for fail-safe purposes into G2. Tuner out of the G2 has the Polytune 2 Mini Noir. That's a lot of stuff to say. First thing, pedal in line is the Keeley Compressor Plus. From the Compressor Plus, we start the modulation side of things, going into the Phase 90 and the Flat Light. Then we go into the Amp-Effects EP Pre. I actually been pairing this on the clean channel with the compressor and the Fathom reverb. Then after the EP pre is the getaway driver. From the getaway driver we have the flashback, then from the flashback to the Fathom, and then finally out of G2 into the Synco up here and out to the front end of whatever amplifier I'm going to be using. So tonight is the first rehearsal that I'm going to be using this board. I'm hoping that it will work out well. I'm really happy with the way that it looks. You know, everything is pretty clean, out of the way. The cables are nice and tucked away. It all looks pretty good, and it's sounding all right. And I just hope whatever backline amp that I plug it into makes it sound good, because if it doesn't, I'd be very upset. Okay, so after like the first rehearsal of going through all this new pedal board setup, for the most part, everything is doing really well. There's a couple small issues that I ran into as I was, you know, testing it out and rehearsing, and well, some quick fixes that I would rather not like to do because it kind of takes away from everything, and some things that I'm gonna have to do some digging on. So let's check it out. So the first big culprit is the Line 6 Relay G70. Now the thing with that is this is probably the thing on the board that needs to eat the most power up from the power supplies. Now it requires 500 milliamps, and although one of the power supplies I'm using has a 500 milliamp output, you can probably hear the rather loud, high-pitched whine. I'll turn that up a little bit. That, if you can't hear it, it's basically just a really high-pitched frequency that essentially is, it's just noise. It's not really contributing to the tone. It's not really doing anything. So that means that there's a lot of noise coming from the power supply. So as a fail-safe, I went ahead and got out my GigRig generator, which I got when I got my G2. I plugged that in, and that's just plugged into, you know, a surge protector right now, and with a regular old IEC cable. And granted, the generator is supposed to output a lot of power, so, you know, I had a feeling it would work, but it definitely works. Like, that noise is gone. It's quiet. It's out of the way. I don't have to worry about it anymore, which is awesome. The other problem comes from the flat light that I've been wanting to use. Now, I really like it as a flanger. It sounds really nice, but for some reason, I feel like when I go into it, I have it on this switch in stomp box mode, and I can hear it right now doing its thing, but I'm not using any of the pre or post gain on G2, and I get this feeling like it's cutting the gain going into it, cutting the signal going into it. Now the way I could potentially solve that is by going into this, you know, the bank that I have on G2 set up as a stomp box for the flat light, and then use the pre-gain or the post-gain to, you know, boost the signal going out of that loop or into that loop, so that I can get the proper amount of gain structure. The problem is I never had that problem with this pedal when I got it. I never had that problem with it when I was demoing it. So it's kind of one of those little what the hell things that is happening. So I don't necessarily know what to do, so I'm gonna mess around with a few things and get down to the, you know, the real deal problem of it. Other than that, everything else is working pretty well. The only complaint I have about the overall setup is that it's all still fairly new to me. I am not a huge, like, plug everything into the front end guy. I usually like to run echoes and reverbs, things like that, in the effects loop, and I have my own reasons for that. The EP pre is working out really nicely, but I kind of feel like it might not be the right choice. So I'm just going to kind of mess around today and think about it and see if this will stay the setup.